Ian O'Connor is author of the brand new book, Out of the Darkness, The Mystery of Aaron Rodgers. It went on sale officially. It was available 2 days ago. I've gotten through a couple chapters of the book so far, and he joins us right now here on 97.3 ESPN. Ian, welcome into the show. How you doing today?
Hey, Josh, I apologize for being late. I think this is my 94th interview over the last 2 weeks on this book. And so if you want to keep me later, I'm more than happy to stick around.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm just glad you answered because I was literally talking on the radio while dialing the number to get you on. So,
listen, I tried. I once hosted some radio shows, and I tried to do that. And it didn't work out. So I'm glad you're more versatile than I am.
Well, listen, I got to tell you, because you and I have talked about some of your previous books like Belichick and Coach K. And I got to tell you, here's where I want to start with you. I loved how you started this book, because you start almost at the end instead of the beginning, because you start the book talking about how you were able to go to Aaron Rodgers, go to his house, meet with him, and corroborate some of this information in this book. And I thought that was such a cool element, because Aaron Rodgers, you could argue, might be one of the most misunderstood athletes in the world today.
Yeah, and listen, he didn't owe me anything because it's unauthorized, right? And he didn't ask me to write this book. He has no editorial control, but I talked to so many and contacted so many of his friends and associates. I think I wore him down. And also he realized I was, I think, doing it the right way. And I was opening the book with his grandfather's service in World War II. His grandfather was an amazing combat pilot in his B-24, 44 missions against the Hitler war machine, and saved lives in a burning plane more than once. And so he realized I didn't have an agenda. I wasn't out to get him, quote unquote. And I think I guess he looked at my previous works. I would think I sent him my Coach K and Belichick book, and I hope he cracked it open and saw it was detailed and fair. And so, but getting that sit down with him, listen, if it was full cooperation, Josh, I would have needed 15 to 20 hours of him telling his life story. But this was at the end of interviewing 250 people, him checking facts, offering more context, refuting some things, or at least trying to. And he definitely made the book better, and I appreciated that.
So I'm only a few chapters in, full disclosure, Ian. But what I want to start with you is this, because I'm still in the high school years of Aaron Rodgers in the book. But overall, what was there a story or an anecdote or an experience that stood out to you the most about this guy, Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I think there are two things. Well, one, I'll start later in life, and I drove his parents to the 9/11 game last September, and he knew they were going to be in the building at the time. He didn't know I was giving them a ride, but I did tell him that later. And that night, it was surreal. I brought his parents there. They sat in the crowd wearing Jets jerseys. Nobody knew who they were. Of course, what happened. 4 snaps into the Jets season. I've never been more heartsick in my life for a fan base and an athlete. And then I had to drive his parents home, and that was a surreal drive. I tried to be as quiet as possible, let them sit in their silence and suffering. And yeah, that was a very, very tough night. But I guess the surprising thing about my research is that universally he's just loved and admired by his teammates throughout his 20-year career. I mean, 99% of them anyway. And I saw it last summer with the Jets and a little bit this year too, is just the way they looked at him, the way they talked about him. And yet that's never brought up in the discussion of Aaron Rodgers as a player or a person. The fact that the people he spends the most amount of time with adore him, his teammates. And really, you never hear about that. And I admit, I was surprised by this. Is going back to high school, junior college. They loved him, and he never did anything wrong. We never saw him with a beer. He was never at a party. At the most, he might play poker with some friends at night, and that was it. He was so focused on being a great quarterback, and he obviously got that done. But I did run into a longtime NFL official who told me, listen, I've known hundreds upon hundreds of NFL players on every roster in the league. And he said, I personally can't stand Aaron Rodgers from a distance. I don't like his stances on the vaccine and other things. But I have to admit, I've never met an NFL player who doesn't like him. So I just think that should be part of the public discussion about him. It just isn't. And so anyway, I was surprised by that reaction that I got from players.
Just to follow up on that, because for those who don't know, Ian O'Connor has written books about Bill Belichick, about Derek Jeter, about Coach Mike Krzyzewski, about Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus, you've written about tons of athletes as well, covering sports for decades as well. What does it say to someone like you for Aaron Rodgers to be as beloved as he is and that people don't talk about it?
Well, it just that's a good question. It really is, because I don't know if I have a good answer for you on that. I think that, Aaron is a guy who is polarizing, and it really started with COVID and his 4 words in August of 2021 in that press conference. Yeah, I've been immunized, when he was unvaccinated. And people forget he was looked at as one of the good guys in sports before that. He supported Colin Kaepernick and the right of athletes to protest inequities in American society. He was on the right side of almost all social issues, at least in the eyes of the media members covering him. And then he said those 4 words. The truth comes out a few months later, and he got absolutely destroyed, and to some degree rightfully so, by the same people who praised him. And so I think that became a war between Aaron Rodgers and the media, and he dug in, and he was not going to back down. And I think that has definitely shaped his image, at least in the last few years. And I don't think there's a great appetite for warm and fuzzy Aaron Rodgers anecdotes. But what I wanted to do in this book, Josh, was to paint that picture too. And I talked to his friends, and they told me stories of kindness and generosity behind the scenes. His agent, his marketing guy at CAA, Ed Berry, Saquon Barkley's agent, he told me he was a frustrating client because I want to publicize some of these acts of kindness, and he won't let me. I want to counter some of the negative stuff in the media the last 3 years, and he won't let me. So I think part of it is there's not a media appetite to tell that story, and the other part is Aaron is fine having it not told.
Talking with Ian O'Connor, he's author of the brand new book, Out of the Darkness, The Mystery of Aaron Rodgers, where he conducted over 250 interviews, including with Aaron Rodgers himself, when putting together this book. On sale now, Amazon.com and wherever you get your books. I have it on Audible right now, so I'm listening to it. And Ian, one of the things you talk about Aaron Rodgers, the person, is I noticed how he treated people when he was younger. Off the football field, he was a kind and considerate person. But as a player, he was an ultra hyper competitive individual. And I was saying before you came on that we forget that in order for these athletes to reach this level of success, that there has to be an edge. And that edge doesn't just show up one day when they are a rookie in the NFL. They have to have that edge pretty much through their entire life.
Yeah, no question. And every great that I've covered, whether it be a coach or a player, had that blind belief in himself or herself. And listen, Aaron, as you know, because you're reading it, he didn't have any scholarship offers out of high school.
Right.
He had a 1310 on his SATs and was a great quarterback, and he still had to go to the local community college. He fell in the draft. That was the NFL draft's first reality show on TV, really, the humiliation of Aaron Rodgers. And that was the same day that YouTube was born. The first video on YouTube was uploaded that same day, fittingly enough. So he's carried that. And then the way he was treated by Brett Favre in Green Bay, the fans didn't want him. They booed his drafting. And so he'd gone through a lot. And he's really a self-made superstar in a lot of ways. And I think he's just carried that chip, which has become a boulder on his shoulder throughout his career. And I think that these guys are all the same in that they never admit fault or weakness. They never say, I'm sorry in any context, because they fear that admitting a weakness or a mistake is that they'll carry it, or it will follow them into the competitive arena and compromise their chance to win at the highest level. And I think he's like that. People tell me, oh, Aaron, he's arrogant. Yeah, he is arrogant. Every great I've ever met is arrogant, maybe except Steph Curry. He might be the only one. Other than that, they all have that. And I think to be an all-time great at your job in professional sports, I think you need that. And that's why he carries himself the way he does.
The arrogance reminds me of the story you tell in the book. And I don't want to give the whole story away, but when he went to 8th grade, they asked him, what do you bring into our school? And he says, I'm going to highly upgrade all of your sports programs. And like they took almost like offense to it because it was a Christian school, but he fulfilled his promise, but that arrogance is interesting because you mentioned, if I can backtrack for a second, you mentioned about how he's a self-made superstar. And I remember talking with Jordan Palmer before, the quarterback guru. Talk about how like all these quarterbacks, they go to these quarterback camps and their parents pay for them to go to all of these events and quarterback guru classes and the Manning camp and stuff. And Rodgers didn't have all of that access that some of these other guys have had over the years, which really nails down the idea that you said it perfectly. This guy is self-made. And Ian, through your research, do you feel like that his story is almost like an improbable one because he didn't have some of the opportunities that other players have had when they were younger growing up?
No question. And he went to a camp at the University of Illinois when he was in high school, and he was better than every quarterback in that camp, including major Division I recruits. And he still didn't get recruited because Division I coaches and scouts did not go north of Sacramento in the state of California. And Chico is north of Sacramento. And so, yeah, I think that I was sitting in his backyard, and boy, it was the nicest backyard setting I've ever conducted an interview in, because his backyard is the Pacific Ocean. We were sitting on a bluff above the Pacific. It was unbelievable how nice it was. And I was looking around, and he bought that house for $28 million in 2019, so it's worth more than that now. And I was thinking that to myself, this guy, through the singular force of his will, made this happen. He is a self-made man. That also, by the way, is not discussed ever about Aaron Rodgers, is that he had nothing. Nobody ever handed him anything. He had to make everything happen by himself. And you know what? When I was leaving that day, and he gave me 2 hours of fact-checking, and I very much appreciated that. I asked him, I forget now, did you buy this house in 2018 or 19? And he said 19. And I bought it by myself. I didn't buy it with anybody, because reports back then were that he bought it with his girlfriend, Danica Patrick. And he wanted me to know it was my $28 million, not $14 million. This was my money that went into it. And I can understand it because, like I said, self-made, nobody ever handed him anything. So he wanted me to know this is all me right here.
Talk with Ian O'Connor, New York Times bestselling author of the brand new book, Out of the Darkness, The Mystery of Aaron Rodgers, on sale right now, wherever you get your books, Amazon.com, or like myself, I got Audible, wherever you get your books. Ian O'Connor joining us right now on 97.3 ESPN. Ian, a couple more before I let you go. You talk about how he was in Green Bay behind Brett Favre, then he goes on, wins the championship, wins MVPs. Was there something about his time in Green Bay that stood out to you? Because I feel like, it's almost like forgotten now how much he accomplished in Green Bay, with the MVPs, with the Super Bowl championship, because of everything that's happened in the last, if you want to call it, 12 to 18 months with the Jets. So for you, was there an anecdote or a story or something about him in Green Bay that stood out?
Well, just his ending, it was so similar to Favre's. It was really amazing. I mean, they both got shipped to the Jets, but it was the way they were basically forced out. Favre for Rodgers and Rodgers for Jordan Love. And I think their relationship now is much better than it was certainly in 2005 and 2006 when Favre was really tough on him when they were together those first 2 years. It's better now because Aaron Rodgers experienced the same pain that Brett Favre did to be a first ballot Hall of Famer for a franchise and then get pushed through the door. That hurts. I don't care who you are. That if you're human, that has to hurt. And I think Rodgers now understands what Favre went through in 2008. So, but no, it was just how different they were too. And Favre was a man of the people. They loved him in Green Bay because he made the Packers again. After the down years following the dynasty of Lombardi and Starr, Brett Favre restored their glory, and they never forgot that. He also was a country boy. He went hunting and fishing like they do in Wisconsin, and the people loved him. Aaron was an intellectual from Northern California, a little different guy who was a better player. I think he was better than Brett Favre, just a lot less reckless with the football, more accurate passer, a little bit of a better athlete, I think. And I think the fans really respected his talent and what he was giving them, but they did not love him like they loved Brett Favre. And frankly, now as a member of the Jets, if he had his druthers, just given the way it ended there, if he can get the Jets to the Super Bowl, the first time the Jets would ever be there since January of 1969, I think the team he'd love to play is the Green Bay Packers. And that would be the most watched Super Bowl, I think, of all time, without question.
Well, don't tell Eagle fans that because they would rather be there on the other side across from the Jets. But, Ian, we do have a lot of Jets fans in our area before I let you go. And, as someone who has covered New York sports for as many years as you have, what has the Aaron Rodgers experience been like with the New York sports market in comparison to past athletes?
Well, I last summer I never saw a love affair like that before. To see a superstar athlete from a different market come into New York, and they forgave whatever perceived off-field sins were out there. They didn't care. I mean, it was just a complete love affair, and they all watched Hard Knocks, and they saw him as a great leader and teammate, and it was giddy. It was a mutual love fest. And everyone bought in and invested so much in it. That's why it was so heartbreaking when he went down with four snaps into the season. And I've never felt a building like that. The pain, it was unbelievable. And like I said, I had given his parents a ride to the game. They were in the crowd, and then I had to drive them home, and that was a difficult ride for sure. But I think this time around, there's a little more serious tone and approach with the New York Jets. They seem more businesslike this time, and Rodgers is very hungry. And I think the Jet roster is better, and I think it's a playoff roster if he stays healthy. They should be in the tournament as a threat to make a run. And by the way, I'm a big Saquon Barkley fan, and I think he's going to be great with the Eagles, and I think the Eagles could be a monster this year. So I would sign up for a Jets-Eagles Super Bowl tonight. I would love to see that happen. But I think it's much more likely the Eagles will be there and not the Jets. But if Rodgers stays healthy, the offensive line stays healthy, they have a shot.
He's Ian O'Connor. He's author of the brand new book, Out of the Darkness, The Mystery of Aaron Rodgers. And like I said, I've only a few chapters in, but this book, there's just so much jam-packed in there. Ian, I appreciate us getting you on the phone today. Good luck with the book, and I hope a lot of people get a chance to read and consume it because I'm already getting the feeling that this might be your best book yet. So congratulations, man.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Josh. It was a real pleasure to be back on with you, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.